Welcome to Allies or Enemies. I'm Jess.
And I am Sean, and today we are talking about Knarr, which is designed by Thomas Dupont and published by Bombyx, who did provide us with this copy, but the thoughts in this video are all our own.
And Knarr is a Viking-themed card game with really interesting set collection, and it's a fast-paced game as everyone races towards 40 points. But let's just look closer at how it plays.
You begin the game with a ship, 2 active Vikings, and 3 cards in your hand. On your turn, you have 2 choices. The first is to play a card. Add it to the column of same colored cards and gain all the benefits from all cards in that column, and then gain a new card from the market based on the color of the card that you just played. Your second choice is to spend the cards you have previously played down to gain one of the available land cards. You take its immediate benefits and then place it above your ship. Both of these actions gain the same things. Reputation, which gains points at the start of each turn depending on your level. Recruits, which you can use as wild cards to help you pay for lands. Bracelets, which you can spend to gain bonuses from the lands that you have visited and placed above your ship, and victory points, which you need for victory. As soon as someone gets to 40 points, players finish the round, and the greatest Viking is named.
So let's just get into it. And I think one of the interesting things is the engine building. You have to focus on building your engine and building up your Vikings. And you can get a lot of rewards if you build up the column and you play a Viking on top of it and you get all of the rewards for all of the Vikings that are underneath it. But at the same time, you do have to dismantle that and spend your Vikings for the land cards. And the land cards will get you points or other rewards that you're definitely going to need. So the decision of when you do that can be really difficult.
So it's that what I get right now versus that long term. It's like that push-pull I have in my whole life. And I always go for what I get right now. Jess is much smarter than me and goes for what she gets long term. But in this game, both things kind of pay off.
Yeah, because the long term, you may just not have long enough. And that is true in particular for the land cards that you get, because the ones that may not give you a lot of bonuses might give you one of the better rewards in one of the earlier columns. So that could pay off, but you have to have enough rings and enough turns to spend those rings for that to pay off. So it is tricky, and you are right. It could be a short-term strategy that might do it, or the long-term engine building. The other thing you have to consider when you play your card is what card you might get. So there are a few decisions of, do I need this Viking for a land card? What reward do I get from this Viking or from the column it's going on? And then what's the new Viking card going to give me?
It's cool because this is it's just such a simple game, like, to explain. You just play a card or you use your cards to buy other cards. But you find all the little strategies in there, and I think that's something Bombyx has been doing really well with Eloa, and then especially with Sea Salt and Paper. And this is like, they're by no means a trilogy. They're all different designers. They're all wildly different games. But there's kind of this through thread through those 3 games of just really clever kind of set collection-ish card games.
Yeah, and all 3 of them, it feels so different every game that you play. So for something that doesn't use a lot of cards and is set collection and spending things for other cards, there is something about it that makes it very replayable in which land cards come out and the different strategies that you might use as well, for sure. But speaking of those land cards, I think from the art perspective, they're definitely stand out for me. I really love the art on the land cards.
Yeah, these are like really like legitimate art pieces, and it's interesting. One of the, I think, coolest parts about them is that they're really set at like certain times of the day. Like the purple ones are all really like at dusk, and then the orangey ones or the reddish ones are all like at the golden hour, and then there's like morning-y ones, and you can really like the lighting in them. I don't know a lot about art, but the lighting in these
blows me away. I look at these and I like just want to look through the cards.
Yeah, and I do dismiss them pretty quickly because you're so just drawn to what the rewards are. But do look closer because they do look really good. And the Viking art is really good too. The people are really interesting looking, and the colors behind them make it very clear about what color they are, as well as the iconography for what benefit you get.
Yeah, they've done a good job of like triple coding these for color blindness too, because first of all, obviously they've got the colors, but the colors are very important, but then also they've got different artwork behind each of them, and so the artwork ties to the different colors, and then also they've got their color addy thing that they, I think, started with Sea Salt and Paper, but also did in Eloah. And it's just this really cool thing of these simple icons that shows you what the colors are. And I could talk a lot about the color ad thing because I actually think it's really fascinating how it all works. But all you have to know is that this game's very color blindness friendly. The one tricky that they have, however, is in the ships, the player colors for the ships.
Yes, and that only comes into play at the very beginning, but the colors that they chose are white, off-white, brown, and black. And it's very difficult to distinguish the different ship colors. And so at the very beginning, you have these tokens, and that decides the player order. So you put them out and figure out who's first, second, third, or fourth. And so you have to tell which of these tokens match up with your player board. But they do look surprisingly similar.
They look exactly the same, but it is not going to matter because after that point, the player board's in front of you, and I'm not going to be like, oh, is this my player board over in front of Jess? Like, it's easy enough that I know this is mine. And the tokens, it's really not a problem. Like, I don't think anyone's going to have a problem distinguishing maybe the black and brown a bit. It depends on how your lighting is. And it does look Viking-y, like I get the theme of it. It's just for that initial, when you're shuffling those ships, I dare you to tell those apart. Like, I don't think anyone can tell those apart, but just use Schwazi or roll a dice or whatever.
Otherwise, it all looks really great, and the iconography is incredibly clear, which is important. It means each turn goes very quickly because you know exactly what everything means.
Yeah, it does. It looks super nice, and you'd said it, but yeah, the pictures of the Vikings, I really like, especially some of them, like this lady with her cool face paint too. There's some really interesting Vikings that have quite a bit of personality in this. But let's move on to the replayability. And we talked a little bit about this with just the different paths to victory that you've got, but overall, how replayable do you think this is?
Yeah, incredibly replayable. And I think it's exactly kind of what we mentioned before in terms of all the different strategies that you can play. And for it being a set collection game, it feeling so different depending on what Vikings are out at the beginning, what cards are available, who you're playing against. If, they're choosing more of a long-term strategy, and so neither of you are getting a lot of points at the beginning, both of you might hold off getting points, but as soon as somebody starts ramping up, you immediately feel the need to try and catch up. And so I think that race element and always feeling like, oh, I came so close, definitely makes you want to play again. But there are a few extra things that have been included for replayability. The ships are double-sided, so one has one icon on one side and then two icons on the back. There are also these artifact cards that they recommend not including your first game, but you can include afterwards. And you only include one card. And so our first couple cards, we weren't too sure how we felt about them because we didn't really take advantage of the situations that they applied for. But it could change the game a little bit. Yeah,
well, I think we've started to figure those out. They always say, like, games always say, oh, no, don't add this in your first game. And most gamers will be like, I can just add it. Well, maybe not most, but we do that a lot. But in this case, I think it actually does make sense because you need a little familiarity with the different strategies more so than anything else. And once you kind of have your head around that a little bit, the artifact cards do really, like, they can really give you a bonus. You'll have things of like, put this kind of land on top of this kind of land and then you get this bonus action, or have so many cards in this column and then you do this. And at first you just think, well, that'll happen if it happens and maybe I'll remember it. But after you've played it a few times, you can really aim for those things as well, and they can really help to shape the game. But I think the biggest thing is it's just that sort of quick card game that is just inherently replayable. Like Sea Salt and Paper we've played, 50, 60 times. Like we've played it just a crazy amount of times. And this feels a little bit in that category. Maybe not quite as much, but it's certainly somewhere in that realm.
Yeah, definitely. And just the scope of the amount of different land cards and Vikings and strategy definitely leads it to being one that you want to play again and again. So let's talk about player count. And we have only played this at 2 so far, and it works really well as a 2-player game.
And it works so well that way because it's just such a like quick head-to-head race game. When you play this at 2, it's like a 15-minute game. But I don't see any reason this wouldn't work just as well at 3 or 4 because the turns are just lightning fast. Like it's just such a quick game, and it would just be more people pushing, and perhaps the strategies would change. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't know if it would too much. I do think it will push the pace. I think you'll be more likely to spend your Vikings to get points because you would want to be able to keep up with the leader for whoever is up ahead. But I think it would work really well as a 3-4 player game. More cards get added for the Vikings, and that's the only thing that changes really. And because you finish the final round, then everyone gets equal amount of turns as well. So I think it would still really work well at 3 or 4.
Yeah, and it is important to note there's not a lot of interaction here. In fact, there's basically not interaction here. The interaction is going to be in the race against each other, and it's going to be in taking cards other people want, taking lands other people want. So the market's moving, and those markets obviously will move more with more players. But also, I don't need any more interaction. Like the race element is plenty of interaction for me.
Yeah, that is a good point about the markets though, because at 2 players, you can sometimes set yourself up for possibly a couple of cards in a row based on what's available in the market, because only one other person might be taking cards away. Whereas at more players, you might find that more difficult and you might have to switch plans a little bit more.
So I guess who is this game for? And I think really if you like card games and quick card games, like I think a lot of people are going to enjoy this game because it's just such a quick, speedy card game. I guess you're not going to like it if you want a lot of interaction in a card game, if you want to mess with people in ways other than just taking the cards.
Yeah, and I guess if you're somebody that doesn't like having to like tear down an engine, so if you want to always be building an engine towards something bigger, this is one that you do have to get rid of it in order to get points. And that is part of the charm of it.
Yeah, and I think that building and breaking down and building and breaking down gives this like kind of hidden complexity. Like on the surface, this looks like such a simple game because you can teach this so easily. Just play a card or buy a card with the cards that you have. And that's all there is to it. So you could really easily teach this to new players. But there's quite a bit more strategy than you first think. And I think this is one where people are really going to learn how to play this well. And people who kind of have played a lot of card games, have more of a head for this sort of game, are really going to get a lot more out of it. But I think if you're a gamer and you're looking for another card game, this does this race element and this building, tearing apart element so well in such a lighter, streamlined way.
Yeah, I agree. And the other group this is for is beard aficionados too.
Yeah, I am envious of the beards throughout this whole game. Excellent beards. And that is it. That's Knarr.
Thank you so much for watching. And as usual, please let us know in the comments if you played Knarr or other small box card games that came out this year. And please like, subscribe, and hopefully we'll see you next time for another game.